Hey, what's up everyone? Ben at Pro Fixer, and today on the channel we're going to be talking about how to remove the adhesive on an iPad bezel during a screen repair. This is something that gets brought up so often, and I've seen so many different tactics on how to remove the adhesive and clean it. I'm going to show you my tips on how I remove the adhesive to get it incredibly clean for an OEM bond. Everything on my workbench is linked up in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. But without further ado, let's get started on removing the adhesive from this iPad bezel. Here in front of me, I have an iPad 6th generation that in a previous video, we reinstalled a new battery. And we removed the old bloated battery, clean up the adhesive, and install the new one safely to prevent any kind of damage to the battery terminal, and also to prevent any kind of damage removing the old battery, as sometimes those can be pretty difficult to remove. Cleaning the adhesive on that one, we used a flat edge razor, which I picked these up from Harbor Freight, and they're incredibly awesome to use. They are a little bit wider than some of the other razors on the market, but they seem to have the best way to remove all the adhesive around the bezel, as well as on the frame itself or underneath the battery, and they're kind of the most universal razor that I've found. So I really like to use those. What you'll do on these is you do want to use a brand new razor. Anything that does have any kind of nicks or pits in it is going to start scratching up the bezel and causing issues, and is really just shaving it and scratching away at it. That's going to cause a lot of issues. We don't want to use any kind of liquids whenever we have the bulk adhesive still left on the bezel itself. You want to clean up as much of that as possible to leave just the slightest residue that we can clean up with isopropyl alcohol as well as acetone, and then use some primer, which we'll show in another video on the benefits of using that for an adhesion promoter. So what you'll do, you'll take your razor and just start working around the edge. One of the biggest things that I've seen with this is you do want to make sure that your razor is actually flat. If you turn your razor in, you're going to start to cut the edge of the iPad. If you turn your razor the other way, you're going to start digging the corner of the razor in, causing issues, and you'll hear a scratching noise. If you hear that, you need to just flatten out your razor and make sure that you're not doing any scratching along the edge of the bezel. But I'll show you on this one edge here. So what you'll do is go ahead and grab the razor, make it flat, and then just carefully use a small motion like this here to work your way down the edge of the bezel itself. And I'll kind of show you what it sounds like if you do tilt your razor too far in one direction. So if you tilt it down too much, I actually don't want to do it because it's so awful sounding, but you'll start to hear that, and then you'll see like the smallest amount of silver starting to be exposed. So if you do see that, or if you see any kind of scratching on the bezel, then definitely straighten up your razor. But go along the edges. If you nick your razor, you would want to flip it over and use the other side. But using two hands with this, basically use two hands and just rotate at the wrist, and you'll be able to remove the adhesive in no time. It makes it very quick and very easy to remove, and as you can see, there's relatively little adhesive left on there. It's really just a residue that'll be incredibly easy to clean up. Going around the corners can be a little bit tricky, seeing that the razor is a little bit large, but realistically it's not that hard either. Just working around the corner, and just work slowly and kind of move it in a circular motion. You'll be able to slowly scrape off any of the adhesive around the edges, and basically just round the corner here, revealing the metal bezel and leaving just the ever slightest bit of residue, making it very easy to clean with isopropyl alcohol. So working around the other side, we're going to go ahead and take that as well. And then go ahead and work around after you've done a corner or two. Just keep going all the way around until you're all completely clean on the iPad itself. Some of the main things to watch out for is making sure that you don't try to go in too fast of long motions, because if you do, you're probably going to slip off and hit the battery, or hit some kind of flex cable, or scrape across your camera, or do something else that's going to cause a lot of issues. As long as you're using in small 1/4 inch motions, and you're not hearing any kind of scratching, it's going to be removing the adhesive very easily, leaving just that residue that can be cleaned off with isopropyl alcohol. So go ahead and start removing all the rest of it and work your way all the way around the iPad itself. Going around the Wi-Fi flexes, it can be pretty difficult because your razor blade will overhang them, and it can cause cutting on the Wi-Fi flex itself. I'm going to show you my trick here real quick. Sometimes you can go over the Wi-Fi flex and it won't cut it, so sometimes you'll be lucky, but if you do notice that it is digging in, I just go ahead and work on another section of the iPad real quick. But what you'll do is you can just come really slowly and use just a very small circle motion. And you've got to cut, basically put it on top of the Wi-Fi flex. And you may notice that it is cutting in. So what you can do is you can drag the iPad or the razor itself at kind of a backwards 45-degree angle. So before you were working at a 45-degree angle cutting in, now you're going to be dragging. And so just go ahead and work up around the edges. And there we go. Makes it very nice, and you will have a little bit more adhesive buildup as far as the bulk buildup on the Wi-Fi flexes, and you'll have to work a little bit harder with the isopropyl alcohol afterwards, but that is to keep your flexes a bit safe. So go ahead and work around the edges a little bit more. When you get to the home button area at the bottom, there are a lot of screw holes where you can snag your razor, so be careful. If you do snag your razor on both sides and you are scratching no matter which way you flip the razor, go ahead and get a brand new razor. But these razors, we use one per iPad. You really don't use them again after you've used them on one iPad because it wears down the cutting edge so much that you do want to swap it out. Just like the other Wi-Fi flex, you may need to use a backward scrape at a 45-degree angle versus a forward cut. This will help when working around the edge of the Wi-Fi flex to make sure that you don't damage anything like we did on the other one there. So go ahead and finish up your iPad, and then we're going to be using some isopropyl alcohol and actually some acetone to remove all of the rest of the adhesive around the edges. Alright, before we want to use any kind of alcohol or any other kind of liquids to break down the rest of the adhesive, go ahead and take a look around the edges and make sure that you removed all the bulk of that adhesive that's still on there. You want to make sure that you don't have any kind of like large chunks of adhesive, because if you do, all that's going to do is cause a lot of mess and string whenever the adhesive breaks down. So definitely go back and kind of rework the small edges and spot check to make sure that, that you don't have any kind of that bulk adhesive sitting around. So we're going to go here and we're going to clean this off. Some of them up in the top part here, this is kind of a weird area in the iPad because you can't really cut along it, especially if it's one of the cellular versions like this one is here. So a lot of times you do have to use a backward scrape on it, and that will definitely make sure that it stays clean and that there's no excess adhesive sitting on there. I've never really had an issue with the top of the iPad ever lifting, so it always seems as long as you get everything else clean and then this one here as clean as you can, it may not look as clean as the rest, but everything else together will hold it all together and prevent any kind of lifting from going on. So go ahead and do a backward scrape on that one there. And just being careful around the Wi-Fi flex and all those other areas. All right, good deal. And that should definitely be good enough. We got most of the adhesive, the bulk adhesive off of the top of this ridge here. Now we're going to go ahead and clean up the edges with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. We use the Q-tip for this, and go and take a little bit of isopropyl alcohol and start to work around the edges. The thing that's different about alcohol versus acetone is acetone seems to break down adhesive, and it really causes just like a lot of stringing and a lot of just broken down goopy adhesive mess. So realistically, what I like to do, use isopropyl alcohol to clean up all the edges here, and you'll see if you can get like a little bit of a reflection of the light. You'll see that the adhesive is breaking down and actually coming off the bezel here. So very easy to do, but it does take a little bit of patience. You don't want to rush it because If you leave some of that behind, it's just going to compromise the strength of the adhesive when you're laying down your new screen. So go ahead and work around the edges and make sure that it is completely clean. And after you've gone around the edges with isopropyl alcohol, it's going to be time to use a bit of acetone. One thing you do want to make sure is that as you look around the edges that you don't have any kind of like adhesive balls or like any of the gummy adhesive left over, because the second that you put acetone on there, it's going to break it down, make it stringy, and then you'll be wiping essentially adhesive slime all over the edges of the iPad. What you can kind of think of as acetone as is it's more of like it strips the adhesive off, whereas the alcohol more so cleans it. It doesn't cause as much breakdown when using alcohol versus acetone. You do want to be careful around plastic components, so definitely be very careful around the top of the iPad itself, but just work around the edges and you'll notice that this realistically kind of melts it away, which is pretty interesting. But if you do have a bit of adhesive left over, you'll notice that it's going to be breaking it down and wiping all that adhesive residue all over the rest of the iPad. All right, and so after you've done all of that, you want to take your iPad and kind of just look at it in the light and make sure that you don't see any kind of different textured spots. You'll see kind of like a different hue whenever you see it in the light if you do have any bit of residue left on there from the adhesive. Always after using acetone, I do run it one last time with a bit of isopropyl alcohol to clean up any kind of that little stringy residue. And that will ensure that we don't have any of the residue causing any kind of issues with the adhesion for our new iPad adhesive. There is one last step that we're going to show in the next video, so you'll find that in one of the related videos here. It's going to be how to apply primer, and that'll be preceding actually putting the adhesive on. Primer is an adhesion promoter. Essentially what it does, it causes a chemical reaction to occur between whatever surface you're bonding to and the actual adhesive tape. It causes a much stronger bond to occur. A lot of times with iPads, we see so many shops where they're having issues with the iPad glass lifting off of the frame, and they're having to do warranties, or it's just incredibly frustrating, and then they're resorting to using something like B6000 or T7000 glue and gluing the glass down, which isn't, in my opinion, the best idea because it doesn't give an OEM seal like adhesive tape does. But in the next video, we'll be showing all of that with primer and everything that goes into it to understand really why to use it, how to use it, and really all how it works. But appreciate y'all watching and following along for this particular video on how to clean up the bezel and to prepare it and get it perfectly clean to make sure you have an OEM fit with the new glass. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and also hit the like button. And don't forget to comment below what you'd like to see on the channel in our upcoming videos. But appreciate y'all watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.